people are excited about RRR. I was excited about things like RRR back in 2015, 2016. By the same director, he had something called Bahubali. And it was like bananas. It was like this kind of stuff is just insane town, and I couldn't believe how cool it was. And so through my channel is how I got exposed to it.
3, 2, 1.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Reactorverse Podcast presented by Passionfruit. Today I am here with two very special guests, one channel, two people that I've been watching for several years now. I'm happy to have on the show. It is the dynamic duo of Jaby Koay and Achara Kirk. Guys, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you jumping in today. I know you guys had a long, your own conversation on your own channel about the Spider-Verse. So I appreciate you coming on here today for another conversation.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, like I said, I've been a fan of you for several years now. Just when I got into the reactor space, you were one of the first channels I sort of found and like really dived into to just see how this whole thing is working. Cut to now several years later, I think you're one of the staples of the community, and I'm really happy to have you here today. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you for saying all that. Appreciate it.
So usually I find it really significant when I'm able to sit down and talk with a pair or a duo, a team for a channel, because usually people tend to start these things individually. I think that's a majority of channels are people who kind of start these things and just go off. They're more comfortable just starting something on their own. But you two have managed to build this channel together to great heights. But I want to start from the beginning, which is Jaby. I know you were an early adopter of YouTube. Going as far back as like 2006, you were making short films, reels, reviews, so on and so on. So I wanted to ask, do you remember your first experience discovering YouTube and what it was like in that early sort of zeitgeist of what it was becoming?
Yeah, I mean, it just was a cool spot to like upload your stuff and feature yourself. And I was just trying to have an area where I could create, a destination for casting directors and all those kinds of people, other filmmakers and actors to see my stuff, my acting content, my martial arts content, directing content. I was literally just trying to use it as a means to distribute that rather than handing out a VHS or a DVD.
Right.
It just seemed like easier to give people a link, even if it was 240 or 360p, because YouTube back then didn't have great quality.
Right.
It was better than giving something to someone that was physical. And Greg actually had been trying to encourage me to convert my channel into something that like could be a business for a while. And he's like, dude, you got 500 subscribers. You can do something with that. And I'm like, that's okay. He's like, why don't you do video games or something like that? So Greg took his own advice and started doing movie related stuff, movie reviews.
The Real Rejects.
Right.
Yes.
And then at some point he started doing reaction videos. Around that time, I started to finally get my feet wet with YouTube, doing movie reviews and stuff like that, and a podcast type thing with CinePals, who is a regular on my channel. He's a host. And at some point, I decided to embrace reaction videos as well. Really, really gung-ho in December of 2015. And that's when I started to look at international stuff. Looked at Indian stuff from all over the world, but the Indian stuff is what really popped off in terms of international content.
Right.
And so Indians kind of hijacked my first channel, which was called Jaby Koay back then. Now it's called CineDesi's. And then I started an American channel, which was called Get Jaby. Now it's called CinePals. And Achara joined in around April. She came on as a guest in April of 2016. And then became kind of full-time in August of 2016. She didn't quit her job until around December 2016.
Right.
Which is around the time I thought I was going to get 100,000 subscribers, but I beat my my goal 9 months early thanks to India.
Nice. Congrats.
Yeah.
Were you familiar with the reaction space kind of when you started transitioning into it? Was something that you had been familiar with before, like from other channels, or was it something that you kind of had to like look into and sort of do your research on?
So when I started doing it, I actually didn't put myself out there first. I was dating this woman who has a daughter, and I actually put her in the reaction space before myself because I was like, I'm not going to do that. That's Greg's thing. And Greg was part of like the Mount Rushmore of reactors at that time, and they were like at the apex of it. And that's why I started doing the international stuff, because I'm like, well, they're focused so heavily on DC and Marvel and American stuff. I'm like, let me try to find a different angle to present to the same American audience, because I feel like I'm going to be irrelevant trying to do the exact same thing.
Right.
And so it was because of Greg that I became aware of the reaction space.
That makes sense. And you mentioned, Achara coming on, being sort of the second half of the channel. Achara, when you came on, did you have an idea of like what you were going to be doing, contributing to the channel? Was it something you guys talked about, was planned out, sort of like a game plan for it?
No. I just came on, like you said, I came on as a guest. And I think at the time I had seen some of the videos that he had shared on his Facebook. And I was like, oh, this is so cool. Like, I love movies and I love talking with my friends about movies. And at the time, I was acting and whatnot. And I was thinking like, I'd really love to get into YouTube, but I don't really know how. And then when Jaby invited me on, I had a lot of fun. We had a good rapport. And then he says that I never left, but honestly, he just kept inviting me back. So I guess I never did leave. But we just kind of kept growing together, and now we have like a really good understanding of working together, and so we know each other's rhythms and stuff, and we can like help each other when we're like doing reactions and stuff like that. And so it's really nice to be able to work with someone who you like understand really well. Yeah.
Right. Was the channel how you two met, or were you acquainted before that?
Oh gosh, we've told this story 1,000 times, I think, or more. We knew each other before the channel, but not very well.
Yeah.
It was we were like kind of
acquaintances.
Yeah, we were acquaintances and colleagues in the commercial acting space. And so I met her because she happened to audition for something I was working on, because I was running that audition for a casting director. And so she came in on a very stressful day. I'm just giving you the short version,
sure,
not
no
the
problem.
Long version. But so we just met through that, and we kept running into each other and became friends on Facebook. And then I invited her on.
Yeah, we kept running into each other. He never remembered who I was for about 3 interactions. And then he finally was like, oh, that's the girl. And and then he called me on his channel, and then realized, especially for looking at Indian content or like Asian content, he realized that I had like a pretty good understanding of it, having grown up in Asia. And so he was like, oh, well, this like kind of balances out the duo. So
yeah.
Right. And what was the sort of logistical process of like, because you said you started with the one channel that then like evolved into your CineDesi's channel, but then you had the second channel. What was the process of starting the second one? Like, did you do that for just reasons to expand your content, to like divide things into pockets where you wanted them to fit better?
Well, what was happening in the beginning was I was really excited at the notion of bringing different audiences together, because, depending on the day of the week, like I would release an Indian reaction, and then I would release an American thing, and then a Korean thing or something, right? I kept trying to hit different areas. And, with time, very rapidly, the Indian stuff started coming more and more and more, because all I was trying to do was honor reaction requests. I was like, that seems like a very natural way to grow your channel, is to just basically, abide by what the audience is asking you for.
Right.
Yeah.
And the Indian requests were coming in more rapidly than anything else. And so after about 6 months to a year, I realized I needed to have a separate space entirely for the American stuff, because Indians and Americans were bickering in the comments, and it just wasn't a productive conversation. It has a lot to do with like that and algorithm, and just trying our best to serve the audience that makes sense for the content that we are trying to react on and comment on.
Yeah.
It's like, we like a wide variety of things. And there's a number of American things that just don't appeal to the Indian audience.
Right.
And so to put that on the same channel where you're releasing Indian content just doesn't make sense, because then YouTube is going to send it to the Indian audience and be like, and then like the algorithmic response is going to be, oh, most of your audience doesn't seem to like this video, when in fact, like a substantial amount of the right audience will like it. For instance, we just covered a few months back Dairy Girls. Recently, just in the last few weeks, we covered Mortal Kombat related stuff, and like we look at the numbers, the back end numbers, and it's like the majority is Western territories that like that stuff. So if we had it all on the same channel, that would be a mess.
Right.
So it just made sense to put it on discrete channels. And I think it was like in 2018 we started the American channel.
And also because like people were just bickering in the comments. And so it was like, you know what, let's not have people fight.
Yeah.
Like we'll just have a dedicated space for all of our like American and English language content, and then all of our Indian language, like Indian stuff, because there's lots of different regions within India, and then they're also like bickering amongst themselves about like who's better, north, south, whatever. But at least it's all like it's all Indian content on one channel, so like you kind of know what you're gonna get, you know.
Right. Did you feel sort of, once that happened, once it was rolling, did you feel sort of pressure to maintain the two channels, or was it sort of a liberation to have the space to kind of like put things where you felt they were better suited?
It's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
That's an interesting question. I mean, the pressure isn't really ever something I think about. You know, I mean, I have in the past year or two, just because everything has gotten so much bigger than when it was just me and a laptop. And my camera. Like things have gotten exponentially more complicated, because now we have a dedicated space for shooting and editing and all that stuff, where, you know, if I leave town, my team can still function without me being there. Like, and when we have editors that are abroad, it's like it's much more complex than it was before. And so in that regard, knowing that there are people who depend on us for their paycheck, it changes things and it adds pressure. But in terms of back then, when it came to the channel or channels, what's interesting is like looking at the numbers and going, okay, these are the numbers we had to hit in terms of views, in terms of finance, in terms of like profit or whatever. It's like, okay, that's what we had to hit. And it's like today, those numbers are like a fifth of what we have to hit now. It's just like, just because things evolve and you're taking care of a lot bigger things, you have a bigger audience or audiences, it's like a lot more substantial in every single regard. And so the pressure honestly hasn't started coming until the last, 2 years, where it's like I've really tried to migrate towards expanding us from just Jaby or Jaby and Achara, as it were, to now a team, CinePals and CineDesi's.
Right. And I was going to ask too, because one of the first questions I usually ask people is, the origin of the name. The names were, you said previously Jaby Koay and Get Jaby for the two channels, now rebranded into CinePals and CineDesi's. What was the thought process choosing to rebrand for that? And I know, rebranding can be scary, especially in this space for people to find you. What was the logic and also the feeling going into that, thinking like we're going to pull the trigger on this?
Well, the funniest thing is like Jaby Koay is not my legal name, right? That's a name that I came up with when I was like 11 or 12 years old. And I just kind of stuck to it. It was one of those weird things where, you create an email account when you're 12 years old, and then when you're 20, you realize, oh, I'm stuck with this name forever now. And it was that kind of thing where it's like, okay, I just have to own this as my identity. It was something I had considered as changing my SAG actor name to being anyway at one point. So I'm like, okay, that's just my identity for online content creation now. But when things evolved, I was like, oh shoot, like Jaby Koay is not just Indian content. Jaby Koay is much more than that. Like I love the Indian content, but I'm not just doing that. And so that was part of what informed me wanting to change the names. So even when I changed the American channel to Get Jaby, it's like that name still kind of like created weird search results. And I'm like, I needed to find a way to better serve the algorithm, and that's in those search results. And so CineDesi's, the name Desi is a kind of a catch-all word for people from India, and apparently also people from Pakistan a little bit.
From the South Indian continent.
Yeah. But like people know when I say it, I'm talking I'm specifically talking about India. And so initially I wanted to get different names for the Indian side that spoke to that audience more specifically with relation to us.
Right.
So there's this food that's kind of like, to us, it would be like top ramen, right? There's a food over there called Maggie. And I wanted to call the channel CineMaggie. Because it's just kind of like, the way I look at reaction videos is, and I don't mean this in a derogatory way, is it's very disposable content. You watch it once, you hang out with your favorite people who are reacting, and then you let go of that content. You're not going to watch it again. Versus something like Every Art is a Frame, or whatever the name of that channel is, or whatever. Like, there's other channels out there where it's like, you'd probably watch that video over and over again. Like if it was a short film or something, you might watch it like 10 times. But for our stuff, you're watching it once and you're done. And so with that in mind, like it's just kind of like comfort food. Our channel is just comfort food. That's how I look at our channels. And so I thought CineMaggie would be perfect, but then I thought, okay, that branding is going to become an issue very, very quickly. So I changed it to CineMasala, but that was taken. And I'm like, well, that's just great. And so I went for the masalas, and my audience hated it. Like, I literally rebranded Jaby Koay to the masalas, and everyone hated it. So I had a very Sonic the Hedgehog situation where I was like, okay, let me make it CineDesi's, because that name speaks to that, that group. And people were like, I don't love it, but I don't hate it as much as the masalas, so that's okay. And so it just kind of, I'm like, okay, well, that's good enough to just move forward, because ultimately it doesn't really matter as long as they can find you.
Right.
CinePals was just easy because it's all baked into the thought I just expressed, which is we're just your pals hanging out. It's just like, it's very disposable content. You watch it the one time, we're comfort food. You watch it and move on,
Right.
Yeah.
So that's where that came from.
Got it.
And yes, it was very scary. That was extremely scary. It took me like a good year and a half to change the name. Right. It was a very, very difficult process emotionally and mentally, because I was so scared of losing my audience.
Yeah, because a lot of people were like, why would you do that? Like Jaby Koay it's a brand now. It's not just you. It's not just your identity. That's like your brand.
Yeah.
But I remember that day vividly when he was like, okay, I'm gonna change it, and then he had the button over the save button.
Yeah.
His mouse was just hovering over it, and we were like, okay, let's do it. Boom.
Yeah.
Done. Changed. Now we wait.
Yeah. It's scary. I mean, a lot of people have stopped asking why we changed it, which is great. Yeah. So on the CinePals side, honestly, the transition was very, very simple. Like, there were people who showed up and they're like, oh, it used to be, okay, it's not Get Jaby anymore, it's CinePals. Okay, cool. And people were fine. That was a very easy transition. The CineDesi's side was a lot harder initially, but then, after about 5 months, I guess people just got used to it.
Yeah, I mean, because Jaby Koay is still on there.
That's
if you
true.
search Jaby Koay, you've still got to find. Don't search Jaby Koay. I didn't do that and find results. Okay.
But yeah, I mean, but I remember when you made the change. I remember seeing the community post for it and everything, and you mentioned that it better fit the vision that you had for the channel, which was the kind of the group setting that you were trying to build and develop with the collaborators that you have, and that's something that you've really clearly put an effort into since the beginning, is having multiple people come on and making this sort of a shared experience, not just yourself, but something that you can spread amongst different people, have different perspectives. And so I want to ask, did you have a plan from the beginning that you wanted this to be a collaborative thing, to spread out, or was it something that kind of naturally developed over time?
So in the beginning, it was just me trying to get out of my depression. That's the honest answer. I was really, really, really depressed, and I was just trying to find an escape from that depression. I was in a very, very dark place, and I credit India for saving my life, because of the just crazy attention that I couldn't have anticipated. It took me out of my funk. Right. In large part, and Greg was there for me, and there was other people there for me that I've done videos covering all that, so I won't rehash all that, or retread it rather. But that was the thing in the beginning, was just trying to get out of my funk. But then I embraced it and I fell in love with it. I got to leave the job I had before, which is how I met Achara. I hated the job I had before because I just got tired of it. And then after about a year or two, I realized that we could really get burnt out. And that happens to a lot of YouTubers. You get burnt out after 5 years, and then you're just done.
Right.
And thankfully, we're going on, I guess, 7 years now. I am. And we're not burnt out, but that's in large part thanks to the fact that we've expanded. And I wanted to keep this going and keep serving these audiences, but I also know that at a certain point you might get tired of me. I get tired of me all the time. And so in order to keep things fresh, you have to have fresh perspectives, and that's why I had a rotation of guests. But I kind of got tired of chasing people down to come on the channel, even though like I'll pay returning guests. I thought it'd be better to have people who are like kind of in-house that are just there as staples of the channel, so that if I step away, it doesn't feel like the channel is losing its, mojo. It's losing its energy or momentum. Like, it's still all there. It's not just Jaby anymore. It's the CinePals or the CineDesi's. Like, all these people make up the heart of the channel now, so that if I have to go leave and make a movie, this is still happening.
Right.
Right.
The burnout stuff is really real, though.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, that we're not burnt out, but like
We get tired.
there was a period, probably like in my third year of doing this with you, where I was literally like, Jaby, I cannot work 7 days a week. There's no way. But sometimes it felt like that, because it's like, oh no, this new thing dropped, we need to cover it. And now I feel like there's been a big shift in how we view things and our priorities, which is like, yes, of course we want to cover all of this exciting stuff, but we're also really focused on taking care of ourselves and like our physical and mental health as well.
Yep.
Which in the beginning we were just like, go for it.
Yeah.
When we're younger, we can, sacrifice sleep and eating sometimes just like to get the job done, right? But especially for someone of your stature who's been around doing this for quite a while now, it is very important to prioritize mental health, physical health in this space. I know people, overlook that stuff, and that is how things start to crumble after a certain amount of time. I spoke with Greg in our previous interview, and he mentioned, yes, like he is in that effort of like building up his own brand of like the Raw Rejects to have more faces in a collaborative manner like you're doing. And it is important for, I think, an individual who's owning the channel and also running it to know like what goes into keeping it afloat, but also keeping yourself afloat, so you can kind of manage like those different aspects. And you mentioned being able to now, or this past year, have like a dedicated space for the team, and having like a different rotation of how things are being distributed. What are kind of some of the newfound obstacles that you've experienced over the last year building that out?
Well, the thing is, no one is going to have your exact vision, and that's true of anything. Everyone is going to have their perspective on things. Like even if Achara is looking at something that I entrust her with, she's going to have a different perspective on it than I will. And that can create conflict if you are like myself or like Greg, where you really like things a particular way. And to relinquish that control was a huge hurdle. To be okay with things not being exactly how I would want it is a huge hurdle. And then the other part of it is, it's hard to get people to love something as much as you do, if that makes any sense. It's like, at the end of the day, you have to live and die with this thing. Other people don't. And so, besides the only other person who cares about my channel as much as Achara does, or the only other person who cares about my channel as much as I do, is Achara. And I guess Andrew would be a close second after that. Because he's very, very passionate about YouTube, and he wants to help us as much as he can. Right. Everyone cares, but the thing is like everyone has other things that they're also doing at the same time, and I totally respect that.
Yeah.
And so one of the big hurdles is finding people who will love it as much as you do and be as passionate and hardworking as much as you are in order to make the channel better and better year over year. Because my whole philosophy is, if I walk away, things should be better than when I left it. And if it's not, I'm doing something wrong. And I'm not hiring the right people, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely.
And so that's one of the major hurdles. And maintaining that level of profit each month and balancing like, okay, I don't want to just look like I'm a money grubbing whore, but I also need to make sure I can pay my rent and feed myself and pay the people who work for us. It's a weird, tricky balancing act. And I tell everyone as transparent as possible, I'm like, okay, there are 3 things that we have to feed every month. our desire, the audience's desire, and the algorithm's desire. It's got to hit all three. Every single day, that's what we're analyzing. In whatever we do, whether it's shooting, editing, or prepping for someone else to shoot.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. Yes, prioritizing, what you're putting out on 3 different levels is like a huge step of maintaining the quality that you want to put out, because like you said, you put your heart and soul into this thing, and you can have a team that comes up with it, but like you said, they won't have the same vision that you had when you started it. Going into it, it's a really personable thing that gets put into it. But with that, I mean, such a huge part of the channel's plural and brand is, like you mentioned, the Indian cinema, and that's been such a huge foothold that you've had in that space for several years now. I wanted to ask, what was your exposure getting into that? Was it something that you were disposed to beforehand, before the channel, all that stuff, or was it something you kind of learned about as you were developing the channel?
So up until a certain point, I thought that Slumdog Millionaire was an Indian movie, and I didn't know it wasn't for the longest time. And I had seen a film years ago called Chandi Chak to China, starring Akshay Kumar, and I thought it was awful. And I was like, I don't know why I should be watching Indian movies. And I kind of wrote it off for a long time. And I've told my audience the same thing. And what happened was in late 2015, I started looking at Indian movie trailers, and I was just like, this is completely different than my previous experience. And I got genuinely excited about Indian cinema, because I'm like, there is some beautiful trailers here that my American friends have no idea exist. People are excited about RRR. I was excited about things like RRR back in 2015, 2016, before RRR existed, by the same director. He had something called Bahubali, and it was bananas. It was this kind of stuff is just insane town, and I couldn't believe how cool it was. And so that was my exposure, is through my channel is how I got exposed to it. Just because I was looking for something to share with my American audience, that's how I found it. And you literally watch my love for Indian cinema grow in chronological, you can see it through the videos if you're able to put it in order. Yeah. Going back to Nirja and Sala Kadus. If you go all the way back, you can see how the evolution of it all, and my confidence with it, and my how I'm trepidatious in the beginning because I don't want to offend anybody, and then getting more an understanding and deeper rooted in that culture. And it's almost like I'm not bilingual, but it's almost like I'm culturally bilingual, if that makes any sense, because I understand the difference between Indian sensibilities and American sensibilities, and how to speak to both of those now.
Right.
Yeah.
And Achara, you mentioned that you had knowledge and experience with Indian cinema before the channel and so on. What was that like?
Yeah, like a little bit, in the sense of
more so Indian culture.
Indian culture, in that growing up in Thailand, in the school I went to, in Thailand, we actually have a pretty large Indian population, which people don't know about. And they're Indian ethnicity and culture, but live in Thailand. Many of them born and raised in Thailand, grew up there, carry Thai nationality, but they're Indian. And so 20% of my school was Indian kids like this. Or Indian kids properly from India. And so I had a really good understanding of the culture and everything just from osmosis, from being around my friends. Also, every now and then on Thai television, we would get some classic Indian movies, but they were kind of those stereotypical ones where it's oh, I'm in my sari, I'm popping out from behind a tree, I'm popping out from behind the tree, and I'm going to roll down the hill, and then the season changes for some random reason. That sort of stuff. For real. Yeah. And then I had seen some, really famous films Monsoon Wedding, or even just then living in the UK, where there's also a very big Indian population, watching British films that had Indian culture, East is East, although that's technically Pakistani, but East is East, Bend It Like Beckham, that sort of stuff. And so that was kind of my experience with it. And like Jaby, I was kind of blown away with all the new stuff that I was seeing. I was like, oh, wow, like, you know, Indian cinema has really come along in leaps and bounds, like so far. And like they're doing really amazing things now as well.
Right. When you started reacting to them for the channel, was there a learning curve trying to get those up on YouTube? Was there any difficulties in terms of the copyright system, anything like that you had to learn to navigate?
In terms of the copyright stuff in the beginning, I wasn't as stressed about it like anyone just starting out. Like when you're a fresh YouTuber and you're just jumping into the reaction space, you don't care about copyright stuff as long as your channel doesn't get taken down. It's only later on that you realize, oh, I need to be worried about that for a number of reasons. Right. Primarily, you know, you're not able to monetize the video. And if you can't monetize the video and it's your full-time job, like that creates a problem. Right. You know what I mean? It's like how you got to eat. And so in terms of the Indian stuff in the beginning, I had another job for the first 3-4 months that I was, you know, going on that journey of learning about Indian cinema. And then in March of 2016, I hit 100K subscribers and it became my full-time thing. And that's when I started to get more worried about the copyright stuff. And I did what I could to get around it. One of the things I used to do was I would divide up the reaction and the discussion video into separate videos. Right. But people, the hardest thing you can possibly do on the internet or in any business, but especially the internet, is conversion. It's like to get people to, like, look at Eric Voss recently started a new channel called The Deep Dive. And it's like, and I watched his numbers and it's like, you know, New Rockstars has so many subscribers. And Eric Voss was pushing Deep Dive, and I subscribed to Deep Dive almost right away because I was excited about it. Right. But it took a while to get the ball rolling there. When Ryan George, I mean, everyone has sort of experienced that kind of thing where it's like they started something new and they're trying to get people over there, and it takes a while for people to catch on, to feel to be bothered enough to go and click subscribe on that other thing. You know,
I mean, we experienced that with CinePals or Get Jaby.
Yeah.
You know, like at first when we announced the change, we were like, hey, so if you like the American content, just know that it's going to be on a new channel now. Yeah. And like in the beginning, it was just like, oh my God, this is kind of disheartening. But what I would say to anyone is like consistency is key. And you just have to just keep doing it. And if you're producing good content, like hopefully you will find your audience. You know,
with regards to the copyright stuff, it's you sort of learn how to navigate those waters over time. But my advice to anyone who's dealing with copyright stuff is you gotta fight it every time. Like every single time. And if you can't seem to fight it, if you can't seem to shake it for some reason, then you should just get rid of that video. Because if you're doing reaction videos, you're doing high volume. There's no two ways about it. You're doing a lot of videos. Yeah. And so if you have a lot of videos and you're going to try to backtrack later on and deal with those copyright things later on when you realize you don't want any on your channel at all, it's such a headache because I'm dealing with that now. I managed to get CinePals down to like less than 50 videos that have copyright issues on it that I'm still kind of weeding through. But honestly, I had to make some hard decisions about indiscriminately just kind of deleting videos that have copyrights on it. Because I just like, it takes time and patience to go through that process of fighting a video. Right. And it's like, if I have to appeal a video, which is very scary, I really only feel comfortable to do 2 appeals at a time. Because if you do 3, let's just pretend that all 3 led to a strike, your channel's gone. And so it can be a very nerve-wracking, precarious process. And so that's why it's like, if you're going to get into the reaction space, like try to deal with those copyright things like at the beginning and nip it in the bud early, because you don't want it to like be a thing that bothers you 2-3 years from now if you're still in this space.
Right. Do you want to tell the people why they ought to deal with the copyright stuff?
I have a hard time.
Why not just leave it?
Yeah, I have a hard time articulating it, but it has to do with the way YouTube views you, especially when you become important. Yeah. So important, like
when you become a bigger YouTuber.
Yeah, when you become a bigger YouTuber. And YouTube's like, hey, you know, you're a channel partner now, and you know, you make money with us, and you're special, and blah blah blah. Yeah. But it's like when you try to ask for something, those copyright issues can come up. And it's like, and YouTube views you differently. The way you monetize might be treated differently.
Yeah.
Like all of it can have a negative impact over time. And you don't think about it because you're not shown all of the back end mechanics. You know, you only see what you see from the creator studio.
Yeah. And I guess starting out, you wouldn't really know that because we didn't know that for the longest time. And then when we found out, it's like, oh, actually having a lot of copyright claims on your videos on your channel can affect you negatively for monetization and all of that. Our minds were blown. We were just like, what?
Yeah, because no one told us.
Yeah.
For the longest time.
Yeah, and you mean monetization even in the long stretch, like down the road, years from now, it's still affecting you.
Yeah. It can affect you.
Yeah, the way your videos are chosen for ads and stuff like that, none of it's really going to make sense to you when you look at the numbers. Like you try to make sense of it and you go, okay, so this video is 10 minutes long and it's this level of popularity. It had this watch time to it and it got this much money. So if I can replicate all of those things, it should make this much money again. And it doesn't. Right. It gets like half or it gets triple. And it's like, there's no rhyme or reason to it sometimes.
Yeah.
You have no idea why a client is attaching their brand to that particular video.
Right.
You just have no idea.
Yeah. It can be very arbitrary.
It feels that way.
Yeah. But as far as the Indian stuff goes, man, like it wasn't hard getting the videos up. Mm-hmm. You know, the hard part is just dealing with copyrights later on, and when you're depending on those videos, you know.
No,
making friends is good.
Making friends is exactly.
I appreciate the breakdown. Yeah, because it's very, very good knowledge to have for anyone listening. But like you mentioned, like back to the Indian stuff. I know a big part of it is that just from what I've seen this past year, obviously with a certain make a film that came out, the Indian community is very, very passionate online. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, they're very eager to be in there, to comment, to show support, to give suggestions, and even educate on, like, you know, to people who wanted to learn more about it. What has your experience been sort of like diving into that community of people and like having them come to you and now having such an established platform for them?
Indians, I think Indians with their films are just like, you know, Marvel and DC heads are for Marvel and DC films. Mm-hmm. Like they just want to correct you if you don't have an understanding of something. You know, one of my things that surprised me early on was like how I would watch a trailer and I wouldn't know who that movie star was, and they would say, "Oh, he's a legend," and I'm like, "God dang!" Like everybody's a legend in Bollywood apparently. Like that was my reaction to it initially. But like you will get corrected on anything you don't understand, and if you're disrespectful, they will come down on you hard. Mm-hmm.
Indian viewers are very passionate, very vocal, and they love what they love. Like it's so fascinating to me to see the longevity of certain stars in Indian cinema. Like, I mean, I guess like American stars that we could compare to would be like Tom Cruise, for instance, right. You know, like because Tom Cruise is older now, but he's still doing action films and stuff. But there's not too many actors, I feel, in Hollywood who still have that kind of pull and excitement.
Tom Cruise and Keanu Reeves. That's
it. Tom Cruise and Keanu, right?
Yeah.
But then like in India, there are so many actors who are older and who are still like kicking ass and taking names in a whole bunch of movies, and the fan base is so loyal. And I feel that as well, like when it comes to YouTubers, like once you're like a YouTuber that they love, or once you're a star that they love, they're like, I will support you for life unless you do something like really, really bad.
Yeah. I think another thing that people don't realize is that Indians love cinema globally. I mean, obviously you have Indians that are very passionate about Indian cinema and nothing else. But there are lots of Indians who love Korean cinema and Jackie Chan and American cinema. There are so many passionate people about Harry Potter and Game of Thrones in India and Marvel and DC. They don't like Star Wars. But not that they don't like it, they just don't care.
There's not as many people who enjoy Star Wars.
Yeah, if the way it was put to me was, if there's a Shah Rukh Khan film that's come out and a Star Wars film that's come out, people are going to skip Star Wars and go watch the Shah Rukh Khan film.
I don't blame him.
Yeah, Shah Rukh Khan's one of the biggest stars to come out of India.
Yeah.
But if there's a Marvel film in a Shah Rukh Khan film, then there might be some competition there.
Yeah.
So what I'm ultimately saying is, Greg and a lot of people on YouTube who are primarily focused on Western cinema probably have a substantial amount of Indian followers and don't even realize it. I mean, Greg is aware of his Indian followers now,
right?
But like, there's a lot of people who have Indian followers that don't even realize it, because Indians are very passionate about just cinema in general.
Yeah.
They care about two things at the end of the day: cricket and cinema. That's it.
It's great to know. Well, yeah, because you mentioned RRR, and that made such a big splash this past year. It was up there, with like in the conversation with people saying like, is this what Indian cinema is? Like, is this, is it just a wild, Marvel DC type trip like every single time? But like, there's like depths to it. There's different genres in its own right. But what was it like for you, someone who's had your kind of, finger on the pulse of this thing for several years now? What was it like seeing that reaction to RRR in American culture over the last year?
I've had that experience 3 times in the last 5 years. And I don't know how to feel. It's just like kind of awkward. So the first one was when Parasite won Best Picture. It's just like everyone got super excited about it. And I'm like, you guys have never seen Korean cinema before? Like, this is a thing. It's been around forever. Like, there's lots of movies just like Parasite. You can get more of them if you just check out Korean cinema. And they're very epic and cool and interesting and thought-provoking. There's a lot. I mean, you can just look at Squid Games as just another example of like, that's not like a movie, but that's an example of like, that's what Korean cinema is kind of like. It's just like, it's uncomfortable, but it's interesting. You can't look away.
It's emotional.
It's emotional. They'll do things that you just like, what the hell?
Weird.
It just kind of blows your mind.
Yeah.
And so, and then RRR was the second instance of that, where it's like, it's just weird that people are now catching on because this has been around. And then the third was Michelle Yeoh. It's just like, she's been around forever, and you guys are just getting hip to her because of Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Right.
So each time, I have this weird thing where I kind of step back, and I don't like. It's weird because I should get more involved in the conversation when that happens, but people get really competitive with their passion when it comes to something new that they're excited about. I remember being in high school and being very, very excited about All Your Base Are Belong to Us. And like my friend at the time, Tim Miller, had no idea what it was. And I told him, and then suddenly it was like he found it by himself, and he was like writing it on the class board and stuff like that, and he wouldn't stop talking about it. And I was like, dude, I'm the one that told you about it. Like, stop acting like you came up with it. It's like, and it's so, but that's how people get. Like, they get supremely passionate about it. And so I just shut up, and I'm like, okay, well, go ahead and let's see how you feel in about 6 months if you're still passionate about that area. Because I want to see if those people are still passionate about Michelle Yeoh 5 years from now, about other things she does. I want to see if people are still passionate about Indian cinema 5 years from now after RRR has, is fallen out of trend,
Yeah, no, but I mean, I thought it was really cool. I loved RRR, and I know like there were a lot of our Indian audience like appreciated the film, but they kind of responded in the same way that I did to Parasite, which was like, I mean, the film's good, but like I feel like I've seen better.
Right.
And that was kind of their feeling, but like I understand.
Well, they were just confused why that one was the one that popped off.
Yeah, because they were like, but we have so many wonderful films, and it's true, there are so many wonderful films that have come out of India. But I think there was just something about, maybe it was like when it released, and like just it was really accessible to an American audience, I feel, because the story is easy to understand. It's universal. It's about, people who are oppressed rising up. It's about friendship. It's about brotherhood. It's about love. And there's some kick-ass action.
Yeah.
And it's completely bonkers, and you don't really get a lot of that in Western cinema at the moment. And so I think it just kind of hit at a time that just like unlocked a door. And for that, I think it's so cool. And if it means that more people outside of India are more curious now about Indian cinema, I say great.
Yeah. No,
Go explore.
Yeah.
Have fun.
Well, I think that, to what you're saying, timing is everything, right? And so in Western cinema, there's just a lot of cynicism has kind of taken over for a number of reasons. And we've kind of lost not completely, but it seemed like we kind of lost the art of just having fun.
Right.
And John Wick is one of the few films that is just there to have fun.
Right.
It's not trying to teach you anything. It's just trying to have fun.
Yeah.
And so RRR was kind of like hitting that middle ground that not a lot of films hit. And I think Everything Everywhere kind of did the same thing, where it's like it's kind of saying something, but it's there to entertain you at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like it's an entertaining, passionate movie.
And it moves you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
And so it's a fun cinematic experience, which I think people were probably hungry for.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole thing with like the competition of passion is something that we kind of ran into when we were at a screening of Brahmastra, I think.
Yeah.
And there were some people there who were watching this, like, I guess their second or third or whatever Indian film. And there was a lady behind me who was asking, what should I recommend to my friend who's never watched an Indian film before or a Bollywood film before? She wants to see a Bollywood film. And I started recommending movies. And she's like, no, that one's not good because of this, and this, and this, and this. And she started breaking down exactly why this film I suggested, which I thought she would have never heard of, was not the right movie. And I'm like, oh, so she's just testing me. She's not actually asking me a question. She's trying to test my knowledge of Indian cinema. Right. And then I said, well, maybe you should just show your friend RRR. That's a really good, accessible film. And this, dude at the like to Achara's right was like, that's not Bollywood. That's a totally different region. And I'm like, I know, guy, but like, and I tried to explain it, but then he got super like just defensive about like, oh, you should have a, you should distinguish between Bollywood, Tollywood, Collywood. It's like, dude, I know, like I've been in this longer than you've been aware of RRR. And I was just like, you know what? I'm going to just shut the F up. I do not need to get angry at this guy. I'm not going to know him after this movie's over. So I'm just going to walk away. And that's why I just shut up. I'm like, I'm just going to keep doing my thing over here because for you guys, this is just like trend of the week. For me, this is my career and I'm going to keep on and doing my thing. I'm not going to engage in the conversation.
I will say though, like funnily, because his sister edits for us as well over here, and she helps me out with a lot of stuff in the office. Mm-hmm. And over the years, as she's been like slowly more and more exposed to Indian cinema, and at first she was kind of like, whatever about it. Right. But now that she's been more and more exposed and she's like watching our reactions to some of the movies and stuff, she's like, oh, that movie looked really good. I actually went home and then I watched it on Netflix and it was a really good film. I'm like, oh my God, it's only taken you like how long to get to this point, yeah. And then she'll like often ask me like, oh yeah, so I saw the trailer reaction to this one. Was that a good one? I'm like, yes, watch it.
Yeah.
So it's really exciting when it's like, oh, people, we are affecting people and their choices and wanting to watch different things.
Anyone who's passionate about our American channel will naturally at some point find the Indian channel mm-hmm. and then get curious from there.
Yeah.
And so whenever someone asks me if I've never seen an Indian film, like, what do you recommend? One of the first things I recommend is not RRR. I recommend Gully Boy because I'm like, that is a fun, interesting movie that has the musical elements and it's got enough of that kind of Western influence in there.
It's super accessible.
It's very accessible
to a Western person.
Easily understand the story of what's going on, even if you don't have the energy to read the subtitles. Mm-hmm. You'll still be able to follow along. You'll get a sense of like how it stands with respect to Western society. And like I feel like you'll learn a lot about Indian culture and the vibe and the energy and like just and it's fun and accessible. It's like it's a very, very cool film made by one of the best directors that's just out there. Period. Not just from India, but I feel like Zoya Akhtar is just one of the best directors out there.
She's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so I recommend Gully Boy to everybody. I feel like that's just an easy, fun, entertaining movie to get into.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That just kind of falls into like it's more Western style of filmmaking while telling an Indian story, and then that way once you're kind of like, oh, I'm primed, now you're ready, and then you can go deeper into the stuff that's like a lot more musical.
Right.
I feel like Western or American cinema has kind of veered away from that musical format
Yes.
quite a lot. And so you kind of have to be prepared going into it. Like, oh, this is actually a musical.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. It's a good gateway
Yeah.
film for,
Yeah.
for all that. Yeah, I mean, I totally see what you're saying. The culture clash of like everyone being exposed to our last year, then trying to explore the possibilities of Indian cinema now was very apparent because even my partner Drew Grant, who is the managing editor of Passionfruit here, we saw it late in the year. We saw it around I think November of last year, and we loved it obviously. But like she tweeted online, she's like, "Oh my gosh, loved RR. Can't wait for them to do more. James Gunn better snap them up for something in DC before Marvel does." It was like a really kind of offhanded comment she made on Twitter, and a lot of people came after her saying like, "Oh, how dare you try and take them away from Indian cinema? Like you're just trying to reappropriate them into American movies, stuff like that." She's like, "No, I'm sorry. Like I just really would love to see more of them. That's where it boils down to." So we just want to see more.
Aww.
We just want to see more. We're just not trying to put anything in any boxes.
Yeah.
But that's a great recommendation for Girly Boy. Is there anything else? Any other filmmakers that you recommend? Like you said, like someone who's not just an Indian filmmaker, but someone who just is a great filmmaker. Period. Is there anyone you recommend checking out?
Anurag Kashyap is the other one, but his older stuff. He had a really huge one
Gangs of Wasseypur.
called Gangs of Wasseypur that was
1 and 2.
very, very interesting. I think those are the ones to start with, honestly. Anything from Zoya Akhtar and anything older from Anurag Kashyap, I think is the best place to start. And then if you're looking for more of that RRR vibe, I would go with that same director. I think that, Iga is such a weird, fascinating,
So much cooler than Bahubali.
entertaining movie.
That might be a hot take, but yeah, Iga. It's about a fly, and you care about him.
Yeah.
It's about a fly who's like a superhero.
There's a movie called I, which is weird, but so interesting and entertaining. And actually, VFX Artists React did a breakdown on the movie I. Completely blown away with what they did in that movie.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I'm trying to think what else. There's
Three Idiots is
yeah.
also lovely.
There-
PK.
PK, I love PK, but there's a film called Chakta India. I think anything sports is always easy to jump into.
Oh yeah, great film.
Achara watched a movie called Bog Milka Bog recently.
Very good.
I watched it a long time ago. It's one of my favorite Indian films of all time. And it's a sports movie. I think sports films are just easier. To jump into. And Chakta India is one, and Bog Milka Bog is another one. And it's got Bog Milka Bog has all the classic things of Bollywood. You got the songs and all that stuff. You got the love story.
Yeah.
And it's like I kind of compare it to something like Whiplash, in that you have a character in there who is so passionate about what he's doing that he has to make so many sacrifices to move forward.
Right.
And there's a lot of heartache in that movie as well, and trauma.
As well.
And so it's a very interesting movie. I'd say Bog Milka Bog. BHAAGMILKHABHAAG.
Run, Milka,
Yeah.
run.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you for all the recommendations. I'm definitely gonna look into those because it's something I'm also eager to try out and learn more about.
Yeah.
A lot of Americans get kind of concerned when they see the runtime of stuff.
Right.
But there's a film I watched the other day called Mohabatan, which is 3.5 hours. And the person I was watching it with was like, "What? You want me to do what?" And so, but when we got into it, it was like, "Oh, this is just a really compelling movie." The thing is, generally speaking, those 3.5 hours don't feel like that.
Right.
Generally speaking, it flies.
Right.
And you'll have instances where a movie is 2.5 hours that feel like 4 hours from India, whereas a 3.5 hour film will just fly by and you won't even know where the time went.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I recently watched Three Idiots. That was one
cool.
I watched.
That's a
it
classic.
I love that one.
Iman Snow, she had watched it for a reaction, so I helped her with the edit for that. And it was a really beautiful movie. And like you said, it flies by because it's a little under. It's about 2 hours and 45 minutes. But the thing about that and RR, just from my limited experience with these films, is that they feel very well fleshed out. So nothing feels like it's dragging in a way where it's like, this could have been like, condensed or something. Like it really feels like they took their time in a really meticulous manner, and that's what I appreciate about it.
Yeah, Three Idiots is a great one, actually.
Super good, yeah.
Yeah, that's one of those films that pretty much every Indian knows.
Yeah.
Because
it like speaks to the experience of, the parental pressure going into engineering, because there are only 3 viable options for careers. It's doctor, lawyer, or engineer.
Oh, Dangal is another great one for Westerners, I think. The ending's a little bit tricky. It was for me. But I think overall, Dangal is a great experience for Westerners. It's a sports movie about wrestling in India. And it's about this guy who is a former wrestler that is trying to have a son so that he can have him become a wrestler and kind of like take over where he left off in his wrestling career. And he ends up having daughters. And so he's kind of screwed and thinks he thinks he's just, SOL because he's got daughters. But then come to find out, they are feisty as hell. And he realizes that he can actually have them become wrestlers, and that's where the story takes off.
And it's based on a true story.
And it's based on a true story.
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, I'll definitely check that one out as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, I loved learning just the ins and outs of everything for the channel, for yourselves. And one thing I always point out to everyone at the end of these things is that I emphasize to everyone who's starting, who's in this, who wants to be reminded of what they're doing here, is that these channels need to be first and foremost an outlet for yourself on a very personal level. And then that is how you can develop it into like some sort of a business and let it flourish. So I want to ask, beyond any financial or monetary value, what would you say is the most rewarding part of your channel for yourself, for each of you at this point in time?
Oh gosh, there's two things that come to mind immediately. If I sat and thought about this longer, if I knew the question was coming, I probably could give you a better answer. But like one thing I really enjoy is like whether it's Achara or someone new, like a guest that I just get along with. Like I really like that experience of going on this journey with a friend, and being able to share that experience is like just super cool, So it's like that personable thing. I really like that aspect of it. And I also just like the aspect of the audience. Like, I actually really, really enjoy live streaming because I get a lot of gratification out of the interaction with the audience and sort of that playfulness that we can have together, especially when I feel like I have a good, substantial understanding of my audience. On the American side, I am genuinely confused about what my audience's personality is. Right. And maybe that has to do with the fact that it's more, ironically, more global than the Indian side. Because the Indian side is like you're coming from a certain diaspora, right? And so it's easier to kind of understand that personality, even though you have a wide swath of personalities and people, like you kind of have an understanding of like the
collective experience.
The collective experience, right? Whereas on the Western side, you're dealing with people from like everywhere. And so if I were to do a live stream on that side, I wouldn't have the same confidence in terms of like the playfulness and the interactiveness. Like we just did a Spider-Man Across the Universe live stream, and I really wasn't sure who I was talking to at any given moment. And so I was just
Spider-Verse, but yes.
Sorry, Across the Spider-Verse. I keep messing that up. But like with the Indian side, I especially love live streaming. Right. Like that seems to be the only time where our sense of humor is on the same page is when we're live streaming. Because like I've done short films that I meant for my American audience because I didn't have an Indian audience at the time. And I shared it with the Indian audience and they didn't get the humor. Right. And I'm like, but I don't understand because I get your humor. Why don't you get my humor? And like it doesn't go both ways when I'm like telling a cinematic thing. But if we're just hanging out on a live stream, we get each other.
That's so funny because we just put out this short on CineDesi's about your pulao joke. So it's this joke that he made in an interview where he goes, "Oh, I have a dad joke," and it's basically what is the Indians' most like favorite birth control contraceptive method? And then our guest was like, "What?" And he goes, "Pulao," which is a dish. It's a rice dish. Right. And I saw a comment,
but it sounds a lot like pull out. That's why it's funny.
And then I saw a comment, and this guy was like, "I don't understand. Can someone explain to me why this is funny?" And then someone explained to him like, pulao sounds like pull out. And then I saw that his reply to that was just like a bunch of like laughing emojis. And I was like, that is so cute. Someone had to explain to him the punchline of the joke so he could laugh belatedly, but he so wanted to know.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of
well,
like
that's one of the
short
things.
films.
See, that's one of the things that happens when you are of a completely different culture, and you're someone like me who just kind of latches on to sounds and particular things that sort of you can kind of remember.
Right.
And so, like, I'm constantly, whenever I'm dealing with someone from a different language, I'm constantly kind of word playing off of things that I know from English because I only know one language. Achara is very studious, and she's all about understanding things. And so for her, she wants to get it right. For me, I'm trying to make a joke all the time. And so, like, whenever I speak to a Japanese person, I've really, really gone out of my way to learn how to fluently say I don't speak Japanese in Japanese just to confuse them.
Right.
So that's one of my favorite things to do.
Yeah.
And so anytime I hear an Indian word that sounds kind of American, I'll try to make a pun or a joke on it.
Yeah.
And so,
Right.
but like, that's one of those things that's like, you can't do that with an American.
Yeah.
You know, it's like the humor is 100% different. There's no way to do that same joke with an American and it be funny.
Right.
You know, it's just because of an understanding of that culture. And so your jokes with the American side are just different. I think I just get loud and obnoxious to the American side. and then people enjoy that. And so like that happened today on the Spider-Man live stream where I got super passionate about something. I don't remember what. And then I just saw a bunch of like laughing emojis and people like getting excited about that for some reason. I'm like, okay, I'm just now getting out of the infancy of understanding my American audience.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then for me, I guess, I just, when I really think about it, like when I have a bad day and I'm feeling stressed out or something, it's like there's deadlines or there is a lot of work or whatever that day, I just remind myself, how goddamn lucky are we that we get to say our job is that we watch things.
Yeah.
And we get to make a living doing this. Like, I would do this with my friends for free.
Yeah.
You know? Like, and that's what I love about it. And that's what I love about performing and acting and all of that, because I was always drawn to that, because I was like, why wouldn't I want to get paid to just play and just have fun? And so like, I constantly try and just remind ourselves, like, you know, like in the moment, sometimes it can feel like life or death to get a reaction video to something out right now. It's so important. And it's like, in the grand scheme of things, those aren't really that important. It's not that important. We're just watching things and having a good time. And so the most important thing is, are you having a good time? And that's what I try and do.
I think one of the benefits of doing what we do, though, is that in a generation where your attention span is constantly fleeting, when you make a reaction video, you are charged with paying attention. You have to pay attention.
Right.
It is your responsibility to pay attention. You can't be on your phone. You can't be looking at IMDb. You can't be playing a game at the same time or messing around or just stopping when you feel like you have to engage with it the way that your parents engaged with content back then.
Right.
And it's one of those things that teaches you to have a proper attention span, because if you don't, it's just not going to go right. You know, like the video won't be, you can't edit the video, or people are going to be annoyed with you for not paying attention to the content, etc. I mean, it can be a challenge sometimes to be an entertaining individual while engaging with something.
Right.
But I can guarantee you I'm paying attention more than most people watching the same thing, because a lot of people's attention spans are quite fleeting these days.
Right.
Although I will say, after like reacting on things for so long, it's kind of ruined me for going to movie theaters now, because like I feel like I have to like hold back because I kind of want to talk more. Well, I want to turn to Jaby and be like, "Oh my God, Jaby, what just happened?" And just be super loud and expressive. And I'm like, no, not everyone wants to watch their movie like that. Achara, calm down. This isn't at the studio where that's what people want to see.
Right.
So shut up, lady.
It's the
But on the other hand, it makes you a better audience member in other ways. Like I will clap if I feel like it. I will laugh. I will just have my expressiveness while watching a movie, because what Greg told me he tells guests when they come on, like back in the day. I don't know if he still does this, but what he told me is he tells people to unzip.
Yeah.
He's like, and so I kind of took that and expanded it into like 5 crazy rules that I tell people. But like one of the things I say is like, because we would get a lot of actors on the channel, right. and I would ask them, I would say, look, so in acting class they teach you to internalize, but for this you have to do the exact opposite. Not that you need to fake anything. I don't want you to make up emotion, but whatever it is that you're feeling, you got to let that out. You can't hide it.
Right.
You can't. It's not internalizing. It's externalizing here. And I got that from Greg. And so, but you practice that daily. You start doing it everywhere. Yeah. And people are like, what the hell? Who is this person over here?
Okay, it's funny, but like, oh my God, was it that fun? I'm like, I don't know. I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah.
So I'm going with that, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the clashing etiquettes of, yes, internal, external type where it's best appropriated to put. But those
my apologies for being long-winded, by the way.
No problem at all.
Anyway,
appreciate the insight. That's what we're here for, always. That's a fantastic way to wrap things up today. I appreciate you guys coming on. We do have a final questionnaire that is inspired by the Inside the Act Studio Proust questionnaire. Just 10 questions straight down the answer. I guess you can both answer, so it'll be 20 answers for the 10 questions.
Short answers. Jaby.
So quick. So it's just down the barrel, what you can think of.
I'll try my best.
First question. What is your favorite TV show?
Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Okay, yeah, I'll go with that. It's hard. Yeah, Avatar.
That's a fantastic pick. What is your favorite film?
Whiplash.
I don't have...
Kung Fu
Panda.
I know. I could beat you to it. I knew you were going to say that.
No, it's hard because so many films are really great. But yeah, my criteria for my favorite film is one that I can watch over and over again. So Kung Fu Panda.
Achara's favorite movie that she's only watched once is Rocky.
I love that film.
It's a great double feature. Question 3. What stresses you out?
The audience. No, actually, it's not the audience. It's not the audience. It's the copyright issues. That stresses me out more than anything. It's like, because I want people to be happy. That's why I said the audience, because I'm inherently an individual. As much as I come off as an asshole or an obnoxious person, I really want people to be happy at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. And so, like, I care so much about that. And if I sense that something is off with someone, I will lose my mind trying to figure out, like, how do I make sure that, like, I correct that? And so, like, I always want my audience to be happy as much as possible. But at the end of the day, to answer the question in short, copyright claims.
Jaby.
Jaby makes you.
Yeah, he stresses me out because of all those things. Yeah. And then he comes to me and he's like, ah! And then I'm like,
Achara's a pretty chill person.
I am super chill. Yeah.
Second question is, next question is, what helps you relax?
I don't think I can answer that on camera.
Oh no. Okay. What helps me?
I don't think anything helps me relax.
No, he's just like tightly wound all the time.
Going to the gym helps me relax.
Yes, that's true.
Going to the gym.
Like
I can say that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I like having a good conversation with a friend, and doing some self-care, like taking a bath and giving myself a facial or something. Right. Yeah, that's very nice. Yeah.
What medium outside of TV and film do you enjoy the most?
Video games. But I mean, we're talking about like entertainment wise?
Anything. Medium, could be games, books, music, anything. I love
exercise. I love gymnastics. You know, I haven't trained in a while, but I love flipping. Mm-hmm. That's one of the things I'm like supremely passionate about. On Instagram, I will just watch people flipping all the time because I love what you can do with your body. And so for me, it's like, you know, weight training and flipping if I could find the time. Yeah. But video games, yeah, right. Also.
I love food.
Food? Yeah, that's great.
Although I was just thinking today, I'm like, I really need to start trying to do things that are not food related on my downtime. But I think about food all the time, like what I want to eat, what I want to cook, where I want to go eat. Yeah.
I was studying ballet for a little bit as well, and I plan to go back to it at some point. I love that stuff. I'm also a huge gearhead. Like,
Yeah.
I own way too much gear in terms of like lenses and cameras and computers.
Sound
and
equipment.
Sound equipment. Like, I love computers and camera stuff and like all that. This arrangement I have here for my personal space is way so complicated, more than it needs to be, because I love technical stuff as well.
That's good. I mean, that's a very passionate hobby. I know of people who do the same, so it can add up. That's the down part about it. What has been your favorite experience with the channel? Watching something, or otherwise, like the experience of the audience reaction, anything?
This is gonna sound shallow, but I think freedom from doing anything else. Because like most people, like Achara said earlier, you know, like we watch movies for a living. And the thing is, we're not confined to any particular space. I can go to Japan and do this job.
Right.
And I could still talk to my audience. As long as I got internet, I can do this job from anywhere in the world.
True.
In theory.
True.
So just freedom, basically.
Yeah.
You know?
That, and like just getting to connect with people from different cultures, and getting to go to India and meeting people who know our stuff and who appreciate us, and that has been so much fun.
Yeah.
Fantastic. What film or show do you wish you could erase from your memory and react to for the first time?
Oh, Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Really?
Yeah. I would love to just I love that movie so much. If I could shoot a like completely fresh reaction to it, I think I would love to.
I think for me it's Whiplash, just because I was so caught off guard by that movie. Like, there's just nothing. Every time I tried to predict where it was going, because I will make predictions while watching a film of where I anticipate, you know, what I anticipate is going to come up. I couldn't anticipate any move in Whiplash. It was like I was doing chess with the movie, and it was destroying me. Yeah.
Yeah, two fantastic picks. What profession would you like to try other than reacting?
That we haven't tried already.
Yeah, that's a dream profession. Like, even if you were a kid, what did you want to try?
Oh, that's a weird question. I mean, if I were to do anything else, if it wasn't entertainment related, I'd probably be a lawyer.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're good at arguing.
I'm very passionate about arguing and debating people, and I will prove my point. I will go out of my way. But if I were to do anything else right now, and it's not directly entertainment related, it would probably be creating some kind of a tech or gear channel.
That makes sense.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think my interests definitely lie in entertainment, and so, you know, if I wasn't doing this, then I'd still want to be like focusing more on acting and whatnot. But outside of that, when I was very young, I wanted to be a doctor, but that was really born out of a thing where my best friend at the time, her mom was an interior designer. And so me and my friend, we loved to like sing and dance and do little shows. And then her mom said to us, she goes, leave the singing and dancing to the pretty girls with no brains. You should do something that requires your brain. And so I was like, oh, and that like really stuck with me. And I was like, oh, what's the hardest thing I could possibly do? I know, I could be a doctor. And then quickly realized that isn't what I want to do. And you know, the entertaining doesn't have to be just for the pretty girls. It can be for everyone.
If I could go back in time, I would probably not be such a stubborn child when my mom was trying to give me piano lessons.
Yeah.
If I could go back in time, I would have told, like, if I could tell my young self something and actually get it to like stick and mean something, is to not be afraid to take chances, number one, because it was like earlier on I was afraid to take chances, but number two is like, learn music, bitch. Like, learn music, learn how to sing, learn how to play the guitar, learn that goddamn piano, learn it, because it will pay off in dividends later on.
Right.
Girls will love you.
Yeah.
Well, that feeds into our last question. What advice would you give to yourself if you could go back in time when you started the channel?
The biggest thing is to take chances, like, because I was really afraid of. I was such a perfectionist that I wouldn't do something. And the thing is, the more that you're a perfectionist, and this happens to a lot of people, because you're like, all the stars have to, or the planets have to align. It's got to be just right. Meanwhile, someone else who's just like you but doesn't have your inhibition is just doing it again and again and again and again and getting it done.
Yeah.
And being better because they have more experience because they're getting it done and they're getting more successful while you're toiling away trying to make something perfect. They're just doing it. Right. And so a lot of us get so wound up on, trying to align all of the elements to be just right when you don't have to. Just experiment, especially early on. Like if you are trying to do YouTube and no one knows who the heck you are, that's the perfect time to screw up. You're gonna screw up. Like just accept that you'll screw up and learn from it and move on from there and just try to learn from your screw ups and not to make those same mistakes. And if you do, it's okay. Like just keep like you said earlier, just keep trying, just keep going for it. It's like I would have told my younger self, just keep taking chances, stop being afraid. Just go and take those chances.
Yeah. Fail forward.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's do that.
What about you?
Yeah. That's that's very good. Thanks for stealing that. That and yeah, just don't be afraid to be yourself. No. I think for a long time I was a lot more reserved or whatever, and definitely doing YouTube has given me a thicker skin and also has made me realize that it's okay to be like the weird me that I am. It's fine.
Oh, and like if I were to tell myself anything else, it would be that whatever you're stressed about in a year, it won't matter.
Yeah, exactly. Chill the frick out.
Yeah, oftentimes the things that we get wound up about don't matter in about a year.
Right.
It's true.
So I've experienced that lesson over and over again with like reaction videos where I get really stressed out about something because I'm trying to get it done, and then like a year later I don't even remember that thing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very, very true. Greg mentioned something very similar about the being experimental early on, and the quote I always try to live by for these things is don't get it right, get it written. Just do it and you can perfect it along the way. And that's what we're doing here with this show. You guys are one of the first interviews I've done with this, and I'm very, very happy that you were able to join me today because I appreciate your time, your insight on this whole thing, very, very much so. And yeah, we're doing this every week now. You can find this on Passionfruit, presented by, and this is the Reactorverse Podcast. I appreciate everyone watching. Jaby, Achara, where can we find both of you on the channel together, collectively, or individually online?
Well, the channel that I would recommend to your audience is CinePals. If you're interested in Indian stuff, then check out CineDesi's. So CinePals is CinePals. I'm sure you'll have links. Mm-hmm. And then CineDesi's is CineDesi. If you're trying to find me on Instagram, it's at Jaby Koay. And I'll just leave it at that because the Twitter stuff and the other accounts get so complicated.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I'm at Achara Kirk on Twitter and Instagram. I'm definitely not that active on Twitter, but feel free. And Instagram, I'm trying to get there. It's sporadic. You might catch me. I do have my YouTube. Javy's like, what? At Achara, which at some point I'm sure I'll post some more stuff on. But yeah, just follow me on Instagram. We can chat. It'll be fun.
Sounds great. Thank you everyone for joining us today. If you're watching this on the newsletter, please share, subscribe, all that good stuff, and we will see you on the next one.